So at this time, I call the Community Service Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Karen, have we met the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we have.
Good. Could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mrs. Becker,
Here.
Mr. Harkins,
Here.
Mr. Grant.
Here. Okay, approval of the October 26, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Yeah, I second. All in favor? Aye.
And I'll abstain since I wasn't present for that.
Okay, so 2 and 1 abstain. Okay, citizen comments. Citizens who wish to sign up for public comment participation during the meeting by phone must call secretary committee no later than 12 p.m. Karen, do we have any citizen comments?
No, sir, we have no one that signed up to speak at the meeting, and we had only one comment with the town hall portal.
Okay.
And you've all
And I
gotten a copy of that.
Yes, and I went through that already. I think that was Frank Babel.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, unfinished business. There are none. Okay, new business. Crime stats 2020 third quarter.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Everybody there? I know that the agenda and the stats are all posted on the town website. It's kind of awkward and difficult for me to go through this without being able to point some things out to you guys. For the folks in the community that are listening and are tuned in, just one thing that we have seen last quarter, third quarter, and it's bled over into the fourth quarter, is our crimes against property stats. We've seen an increase, especially with our car break-ins, and we talk about this, I think, 2 or 3 times a year. Lock your cars. That's all I can encourage. We have all of our gated communities across the island have been hit. You can go through the breakdown in the back of the stats, and you can see where these events are happening. I can tell you that 85% of the cars that have been broken into have been unlocked, and we are losing a lot of firearms are getting out on the street because people are leaving them in their cars and leaving them. We have started. I'm sorry? Ms. Becker, did you say something?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I heard a woman's voice. We're starting a campaign through social media and just publicly. It's called Park Take Lock, that encourages folks to take their valuable items out of the car, lock their car before they go to bed. It's something that everybody can do. You know, it's time for bed. Just run outside and hit the clicker. Most of our cars are getting broken into between 1 and 5 in the morning. And they're on foot or on a bicycle and just going door to door in neighborhoods and pulling on car doors. And they're making a killing off of it. Other than that, like our traffic accident stats have been on a steady decrease since 2017. I think you can see our accidents have been nearly cut in half, accidents without injury. And our collisions with injury have seen a steady decrease over the last 4 years. So overall, we're doing good. My biggest message to anybody that's listening is please, please, please lock your cars. And that's about all we've got.
All right, do we have any questions from the committee?
Just one, if I may. Do you have any sense of the what's resulting in the good news on collisions? The downward trend.
You know, I would love to give you some statistical or research-based answers to that. I can't tell you. I mean, you have to take into account that cars are coming with some increased safety features now. You know, I think that enforcement obviously is part of it. without sitting down and doing a study and really jumping into it and looking to see, I can't answer that. There's so many different factors we have to look at. You know, we had a period of time in the earlier part of the year where there weren't a whole lot of cars on the road.
Mhm.
You know, that it's just the nature of 2020, I think helped that a little bit, but there are a lot of different things you have to take into consideration. You know, you've got the texting and driving laws now that people I think are finally starting to abide by. You've got, you know, cars that are equipped with digital, you know, features like the Apple Play and stuff like that, where everything is pretty much hands-free and you can focus on your driving. So aside from those things that just hit off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Harkins.
I just had one question. In terms of Marine Patrol, I know that was down this year. And my question is that due to the coronavirus or as the major issue? I was just curious about that.
No. We had one of our Marine Patrol assets this summer was injured and was not able to be out in the boat as much as we had anticipated. And we were having to backfill some of his daily activities with folks from other sections. And that, I'm sure, was a huge part of it this year. Going forward, you know, with the boat landings being closed for a short period of time, I don't think the virus really had any impact on boating activities overall.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Grant.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
I don't have
Just,
questions. I
Okay.
just wanted to say thank you for the report.
You're welcome, Ms.
Thank-
Becker.
yes, just one more. Officer, could you share with us how your your workforce is holding up with the COVID-19?
We're doing pretty good. You know, I think last meeting I said we had been holding steady on our side without any effects. We've had a couple of folks mainly that work out of the office that have gone down, but have recovered, you know, very quickly and very well. Our office is still closed to the general public, so any business that folks have with our administrative side here is taken care of outside. We're not doing fingerprints. We're not allowing the general public inside for any reason unless it's a necessity. We have adapted some of our operations, you know, going into houses on death scenes unless we absolutely have to. Just trying to limit our interaction and the folks that we're taking into the jail. You know, if we can give them a courtesy summons for a violation versus incarcerating them, we've tried to do that just to protect the general jail population overall and everybody involved. But we're holding steady and doing well.
Oh, good news. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and I wish you well in the future. And if you need me for anything, I'll be happy to assist. Okay?
I know where to find you, Mr. Grant. You guys have a good holiday season.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's see. Next on the agenda. All right. Okay. Shore Business Services end of season report.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear
Good
me?
morning.
Yes. Good
Yes.
morning.
Changes to town code were adopted in November 2019, which prohibited personal property being left on the beach between sunset and sunrise. As a result, the town then expanded our contracted beach management services to include removal of abandoned personal property. This took place 4 days per week on the beach between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1 a.m., which was performed by Spartina Marine Consulting. Effective June 1st of this year, we have been reporting monthly on beach management activities and services provided by Spartina Marine Consulting, and also the town's ongoing franchise agreement with Shore Beach Services. As a result of those services provided, a total of 594.69 tons of trash and recyclables, which includes bagged and abandoned personal property items, was removed from the beach. That was at a total cost of $144,683.59. $117,073.16 represented the cost for the services provided by Shore Beach and Spartina, while $27,610.43 was paid in hauler fees for the disposal of those items. Between May 1st and October 31st, 17,022 abandoned pieces of personal property have been removed from the beach. Of this number, chairs topped the list at 5,925, followed by miscellaneous items, which was 3,830. An item that would be considered miscellaneous is clothing. Umbrellas, 2,883. Toys were 1,867. Towels, 1,273, and 1,244 tents. The agreement with Spartina Marine provided the town an opportunity to invest 251 hours of educating beach patrons about beach etiquette and preservation, in addition to the 13,721 advisements given largely by Shore Beach Services. The holes and shovels category resulted in the largest number of advisements given, those being 4,138, followed by alcohol, 3,772, glass, 3,168, dunes, 2,186, personal property, 319, and lights, lastly, at 138. In October, we held a joint meeting to review what considerations should be made. No action is being sought at this time. Staff is collecting stakeholder information and assessing the potential for programmatic changes and potential policy revisions for council's consideration in advance of the 2021 season. Topics of discussion include communications and signage, amending guidelines for boats on the beach, review of the extent of trash and recycling receptacles compared to the pack it in, pack it out philosophy, prohibition of certain types of personal property being brought on the beach, such as tents, and modification to regulations which may govern Fish Hall Beach. Is there any questions on the information that was provided or any of the statistics at this time?
Mr. Harkins, go ahead.
Thanks, Alice. Do you have any data on year-to-year comparisons going back 3 to 5 years? And the second question is, do we have any similar data from other beach communities that are open to the public to see if we're, right in the middle, or are we off to the right or to the left? Thank you.
Sure. We do not have any statistics on what other communities collect from the beach. We have started to touch base with communities such as Kiowa, see what they were doing, Folly Beach, Isle of Palms, just to see going forward, like for instance, their trash receptacles, where they provide them, how many, and so forth, to see if we want to reduce the footprint of those. But we do not have any numbers on the type of trash and debris that they collect from those receptacles or off the beach as far as abandoned property items go. It seems that most communities, they provide only trash receptacles at their beach access points, where we have a lot more receptacles available for beach goers, 224 trash and 74 recycling containers right now. So we provide a lot more receptacles than most communities do. To answer the other part of your question, we don't have any historical data to compare. This agreement with Spartina Marine has provided us pretty much a baseline going forward to track all of these items and the tonnage to see what changes and recommendations we need to make and go from there.
Okay, thank you, Alice.
Ms. Becker, you have any questions?
I do. I was just wondering, well, first, thank you, Alice, for your report. I was wondering if you have any anecdotal stories to tell with regard to the advisements on our new hole and digging of sand holes and the shovels.
One of the things that we're looking at, staff is considering in reviewing the signage that we currently have, and maybe including, because that was one of the items, as you've seen, is one of the largest advisements given, that we might include that on the signage going forward, and that's something that we're considering.
People generally accept the advisement well and understood the purpose behind it?
Yes, for the most part, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have one suggestion. Maybe this is something we should, I don't know if it's possible, but send this to our Parks and Recs Committee to look at in terms of strategies of how we can reduce our footprint in terms of trash, because enforcement is not the only answer that we should be looking at in terms of having more police code enforcers out there. I think we need to look at how the public can help the town improve the safety and the quality on the beach with the trash. And maybe the rec committee might be able to assist us with that. And that might be through communication. That might be through some new ideas and concepts. But that's my suggestion. But I do also thank you for your report, but we have to do something to address this before it's already out of hand, but we have to do something to address this for future summers. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yeah. All right. My question would be, do we have a motion to maybe move this to the the rec committee to look at for future and have a discussion at the full town council at next meeting, possibly to discuss that?
Mark, I think that's a good idea. We've been frustrated about this for a long time, and thanks to Alice and her colleagues, we're starting to quantify data. But at a minimum, for a town that tries to pride itself as being eco-sensitive, we pride ourselves in protecting the environment, and we want to maintain or enhance our brand. The data here is really disgraceful. So I would move your motion to see if some brighter minds can come up with some ideas.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, let's see. Find my agenda. Reconsideration of Point Comfort Road speed hump request.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman Grant, members of council. I'm Jeff Buckaloo, town engineer. And if you'll recall, this item came to us, it was born out of the Point Comfort neighborhood's request for speed humps in their neighborhood due to a speeding problem they perceived. So it came to the committee last year, and it was going to full council, but it was sent back to committee. And here we are, but what the committee had recommended back then was they were in favor of installing the speed humps, but they also directed staff to develop a traffic calming policy. And so to address the traffic calming policy first, What we're recommending is that we adopt the Beaufort County traffic calming policy. They have a very good, clear, and concise policy. I think part of the beauty of it, it would be a consistent policy on all public roads on Hilton Head Island, whether they're owned by the town, county, or state. The state is not putting speed humps on any of their roads. They push that down to the county or the municipality, and they make them apply to put speed humps on state roads. We do have several county roads on the island. I don't know that anyone's petitioned to have speed humps put on the county roads, but the county does have a policy for that. And so if we were to adopt that policy, we would be consistent with the county, and we could deal with these requests on a more consistent basis. One thing about that policy I included in your packet, it's Exhibit A. There are traffic calming measures that may be included under this policy down under number 10, and I would recommend that we add interactive speed signs as one of the tools or options that's not currently in there. I would also ask the county that they update their policy to include that as well. And speaking of these signs, this is the staff recommendation in lieu of installing the speed humps now, because as I say, you have to go to the DOT and apply and receive permission to do that, and it's a cost, etc. What we would like to do, staff recommends that we install 2 of these interactive speed signs. These are the "Your Speed Is" signs you see in some places on the side of the road. They track your speed. They give you instant feedback. If you're exceeding the speed limit, some of them flash or give some notification. And so the DOT has recently issued a policy on such signs. I talked to the district traffic engineer in Charleston, and he said this policy was born out of a need at the DOT to address the randomness that they're seeing with these signs. They see signs from here to Myrtle Beach, different varieties, different colors, different flashing lights, etc., that may distract drivers. And so they're trying to standardize that. And so they have set forth a policy by which we would need to comply. The signs we purchased last year comply with that policy, except for there's a flashing white circle that emits once you're exceeding the speed limit. The DOT does not allow any flashing lights, strobes, etc., so we would have to disconnect that or block out those lights. But what we would do under this recommendation is we would conduct a speed study, and we would apply to the SCDOT to install these interactive "Your Speed Is" signs on Point Comfort Road. We would put 2 of them kind of mid-block on the road facing each direction, and we would put those in place and let them work throughout the summer, and then come back and make an assessment, say in August or September, on the effectiveness of those signs. If they were deemed not to be effective, we would come back to council, and then the next step would be speed humps, if you were to take it to the next level. And so that's the recommendation of staff on this item.
All right, Bill, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jeff, for the report. In terms of the petition signed by the landowners, what does the data tell you about the percent that represents in the community?
The county policy and the DOT policy, I think both require 75%, and the petition we received last year did meet that threshold.
Okay.
My recollection. We can talk back to the POA and verify that at this time, but yeah, they met the petition requirement.
And do we have any hard data on accidents and tragedies on the road in that community?
Yes, sir. The traffic engineer, he tracks that data and consults with Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, and there have been no accidents going back to July of 2013 on Point Comfort Road, period. There was one accident on one of the side streets since that time, and that was a vehicle backing out of a driveway that struck another passing vehicle, but speed was not a factor in that accident.
Mm-hmm. And my last question is, have we introduced speed bumps in any other part of the island? And if so, have we been able to measure the efficacy of that?
No, sir, not on any town roads. We've had projects in the past where the town is building a road or reconstructing a road, and we've had neighborhoods request them, but in the past, and I think that was under different fire chief administrations and their view on them, that we did not install them. So no, sir, we have none in place on town roads.
Yeah, and I guess, I'm sorry, and what's the fire and rescue view on speed bumps?
Currently, if it does not impede progress to a call out, so they will do a study. They looked at this one, they looked at the number and spacing of the humps and looked at what it would do to response times. And on this particular proposal or petition, they deemed it would be acceptable. So we've got fire rescue sign off on this specific neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Yes.
David. Oh, I'm sorry. Tamara first, then David, okay? Tamara,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jeff, for your information. What would these flashing your speed is lights, would that be 2 mid-block, two going one direction, 2 coming the other, for a total of 4, or just 1 each way?
Just 1 each way. We would make sure that they're mounted on a speed limit sign, of course. The new speed limit down there since the DOT changed it last year is 25 miles an hour. So kind of mid-block near Sea Olive Road, we would find a good strategic, clearly visible location and make sure we mounted 1 facing each way.
And what would the measure of success be?
We're buying 2 modules to plug into these signs. We just ordered them last week. That tracks the data and will give us statistics. So we'll put these in place and we'll measure how many vehicles exceed the speed limit. So we would have good data. We would look at that data. We would look at any accidents, of course. We take feedback from the neighborhood, but mainly the data we get out of those signs.
So, so I have a number of thoughts, and I'm not sure, Mark, if you're interested in this information now, but these are my thoughts. First, there are speed bumps on Sandy Beach Trail that are effective for traffic coming through where the hotel splits in half, and a lot of traffic goes past there, and it really I think makes a difference in people slowing down. I also think that if we have a petition that represents the majority of the residents in the neighborhood, it's their quality of life that's affected, and it's what they experience every day. So while our statistics may indicate that the speeds aren't being exceeded and accidents aren't happening, I think those who live in a neighborhood have a different perspective, having to deal with it every day. And given the fact that the petition met the threshold in fire and rescue, found it to be acceptable, I would be inclined to go ahead and ask that the speed bumps are put into place.
Thank you, Tamara. I agree with you, but I was going to say that later. All right,
Sorry,
David.
I wasn't. There you go. Now you don't have to listen to me twice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Point Comfort is in my ward. I'm very familiar with this situation, and I think it's important for the committee to understand that the first 3/4 of Point Comfort Road has very few entrances, but all those entrances are to communities. There are no driveways until you get past Ashton Cove, and then all of a sudden you have single-family houses on the side of the road, which up to that point can accommodate 35 miles an hour without any difficulty. All of a sudden you have driveways, cars backing out, kids coming out of houses, and it becomes very, very dangerous within a couple of 100 feet. And I think that is the circumstance that most concerns the families and property owners in Point Comfort. somehow the cars have to be forewarned, and I think the interactive speed sign will help. But my position on this has been that if the property owners of Point Comfort want to have speed bumps, and they understand that there is some inconvenience with those speed bumps, then I support that request. This has been a situation that has been an aggravation and concern for a number of years. So I think we should entertain the possibility and request the property owner's decision on the 6 speed bumps, and then move forward with how they proceed, how they want to proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This is what I was going to add to it. As we look at how we address speeding in neighborhoods, I think, we've addressed this long enough that we need to go ahead and move forward with the speed bump, especially now that the fire department believes it will not delay timing, and the community understands that. What I would ask the staff for future reference, when we move forward and look at other communities similar to this, is maybe alternatives in terms of, instead of paving, but look at gravel. I don't know if a different asphalt will encourage slowing down and possibly the signage, but I think that's something that needs to be brought to the full town council or committee's attention. And what are other communities using to slow down the speed? In that case, it might be cheaper, but I think that's something that we need to look at. But I do believe we talked about this for at least 2 or 3 years in dealing with Point Comfort. And I think it's time we move forward with the speed bumps now and add in addition to those signs. And that will also provide data. But we can't wait till something happens and then we regret not moving quick enough to address that. So that's my personal opinion. But I would like to have a motion if we can move to full council to implement the speed bumps in addition to the signs that Jeff Buckaloo talked about, and then let it be addressed at the full town council to make a determination. I see Josh is on. Josh, you have any questions?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make a comment real quick on that last point, and certainly understand the will of the committee. I would say, however, though, that if the committee's recommendation is going to be to go ahead with installing the speed bumps, the speed limit signs, the radar signs, really become ineffective at that point because you're no longer gathering data about the actual movement of the traffic flow through there, because obviously the cars are going to be slowing down for the speed bump. So it wouldn't be doing both simultaneously because one kind of cancels out the other. So that's why staff's recommendation was partly because this potentially sets a lot of precedent for other areas on the island. And it's not to say that it may not be warranted, but if we're going to make a decision, we want that decision to be based upon solid data showing that it's necessary. And so that's why this was kind of an incremental approach, in that if we put the speed sign out there, we gather the data that says either it is being effective and the speeds are now slowed, which means you don't need the speed humps because the speeds have slowed down, or you've put the speed signs out there, the data shows that it's not being effective, then we need to take that next step forward, which is installing the permanent speed humps. But my point in saying all this is there's a lot of other communities out there that would say, I just want you to put them in. I don't care about the data. I don't care about anything else. I don't care that there hasn't been a history of accidents. I just want you to put them in. And we have to be careful about setting that precedent that we're just going to install these in every location, because while it may not be significantly detrimental to the fire rescue services in this particular location, if that grows to a certain extent, because again, that precedent's been set, that very well could have a negative cumulative effect on that service. And so I get my total point is I want to make sure that we're acting upon the data which is driving these decisions.
Okay, thank you. Tamara?
Well, I appreciate Josh's input on that. And I absolutely want to make sure that I'm on the record that's saying any future expansion of a speed bump policy must be approved by fire and rescue. Those moments that it takes them to get to a situation are absolutely critical, and you can count them on your hand, and before you know it, tragedy happens. So that is a given, that any expansion any further, I thought of moving this forward would require that the fire and rescue is comfortable with and has signed off on it, or it's a non-starter. But for this particular case, I think that, as you said, Mark, this has been going on for quite some time. And it's a situation where those who are affected by it have continued to pursue it, which means it's continuing to be a situation they're uncomfortable with in their own neighborhoods. And I think they know best with regard to that. And I stand by my commitment to move this forward.
Bill?
Yes, I think by way of background, given the comments, the visual that David Ames created in my mind, and I have driven down that road, to be at 35 miles an hour uninterrupted, and then lo and behold, you enter a neighborhood without any slowdown activity, any slowdown features. As a parent of small children, I would think that they would say, this is dangerous. So I think second is that 75%. I mean, how frequently do we ever get 75% on anything? So 75% came forward. This is their turf, and we're there to serve them. So, and I think the third point is fire and rescue has not thrown any impediments before us to do this. So, and respecting Josh's comments at the same time, I would move that we go before town council with a motion to respond in a positive way by inserting the speed bumps and ask town council to authorize a petition to the South Carolina Department of Transportation to give the green light to do that.
Was that a motion, Bill?
Yes,
if
ma'am.
it was, second it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's 3. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Very good. Yes, sir. And thank you as well. And the next item is mine also.
Okay.
And this is reporting back to council on the overhead streetlight project. This was a pilot project with the primary objective was to illuminate the crosswalks at night so that motorists would have a greater awareness of folks crossing the road. Took a lot more time than we had anticipated, cost a lot more money than we had anticipated, $175,000 for the total cost. And again, this had to be permitted through SCDOT. That was part of the reason. Took so long for the design and approvals, and then we had to acquire easements to set the lights on private property on the Yacht Cove side of the parkway. So anyhow, it's been in place since August, and we solicited public opinion feedback on the project. Carolyn Grant did some media. We had some TV stations in the pocket do stories and try to drive people to that public opinion survey. We had 197 people respond to the public opinion survey, and it wasn't overwhelming margins, but I've included that survey in your packet. It was 57% dislike or disliked the lights very much, 33.9% liked them or liked them very much, 65% didn't want to see more crosswalks illuminated, 68% were against funding these lights instead of building more pathways, 59% experienced difficulty with their eyes adjusting to the darkness after passing through the lights. 62% or 65% did not feel it was a cost-effective use of funds for crosswalk safety. 58% claimed they always obey the pathway stop and yield signs, and 57% thought there's not enough public education on this topic. So the takeaways from that public opinion survey were, more folks dislike the lights than like them, and I think staff, we need to do a better job of educating the public on crosswalk safety, on SEDOT or South Carolina laws regarding crosswalks, et cetera. So we know that's something we need to do. But as far as public opinion, that's what you have. And Chris Darnell also took this to the design review board last week just to get their take on it post installation and see what they thought. And the committee, it wasn't a formal vote, but the board said they didn't think the lights were in keeping with Allen character, but if we had to install lights, they liked this style. The the dimensions, the color, the height, the brightness, etc. They thought these were acceptable if we are to go forward with a program to install lights on other crosswalks. And just to remind you about these crosswalks, we looked at the unsignalized crosswalks on the 278 William Hilton Parkway. And so there are 8 remaining besides Yacht Cove. And if you were to project that cost out, and I think it's somewhat conservative, but if you were to say that's a typical cost and you wanted to illuminate the other crosswalks, it would be $1.4 million to do so. So we were bringing this back to committee for discussion. Whether the committee wanted to take a motion or refer it to a town council workshop discussion item, I was going to leave that up to you.
Okay, let's go with Bill first and then Tam.
So Jeff, specifically, what are you recommending from a staff standpoint?
Direction from town council, talking about the last item, the metrics to gauge effectiveness. We could, have these lights in place and look at accident history over a period of time, and use that as the main metric for effectiveness. But as I said, it's an expensive program. Public opinion seemed to not like the lights so much. We didn't put forth a formal staff recommendation. But,
Well, I guess I'm putting you on the spot. So what is your recommendation?
I would not recommend we go forward with the program to eliminate all the other crosswalks. That would be my recommendation.
Well, I think the birthing of this process, I think, came from a long history of accident activity, and then the tragic death of that young girl at this location. And my recollection was that we were going to use this as a beta site in terms of functionality and aesthetics and effectiveness, and then springboard from this to other locations. Another hot location, for example, is near the Dunkin' Donut location, where there's high density, low income community where little children run across the street to get an ice cream cone or a loaf of bread or a bottle of milk or something and run back. And I've been at that location a few times with others. I think Heather Rath pulled together a neighborhood response group. And clearly, respecting the comments from the public in terms of aesthetics, I think safety trumps all of what has been said. So why can't we become creative from an aesthetic standpoint and still address in a curative way the situation with lighting systems that may slow down, may mitigate the situations that we see every day. So I'm kind of disappointed in this report. I would hope that we could say, well, we've learned a few lessons here, but let's not stop. Let's figure out how we can do it better. And doing it better may be stylized in an individualistic way, given the unique locations throughout the island, so that one site doesn't fit all. But let's roll up our sleeves and in a very deliberative way, in a very ad hoc way, start addressing the other 8 or 9 locations that lend themselves to tragedy.
Thank you, Bill. Tamara?
So a couple of things. And I think the realist, for me anyway, the realistic view of 278 and our pathways and our crosswalks is that they just no longer fit together as they don't fit together easily. 278, increasing traffic, higher speeds, more people just in general on bicycles and walking. And then the idea that we still want, which lends itself to more of an urban setting, but we still want to cling to, and I hope we can, and I hope we can actually reverse some courses. The idea that we're a small, quaint island where people can get out on their bikes and walk their dogs and cross the road to get that snack or jug of milk that mom sends them out to get safely. The two just don't mix. They don't fit together anymore. So does lighting the area make all the difference? In my mind, if it was my child or I was trying to cross a road at an unsignalized light, I wouldn't take that chance, even with the lights above. To me, more light means more speed. You can see more, you're going a little bit faster maybe. You're not necessarily slowing down. So just doesn't seem to fit together for me. I would otherwise actually encourage that we discontinue, create barriers so that we don't have unsignalized crosswalks. Do I think that means that everyone will stop crossing at places where they shouldn't be crossing? No, there will always be people who will cut through the landscape or however to get across. We see it now. But the idea of planning a place where you can do that on this type of road that it's become, to me, just doesn't, I can't make sense of it. I'm not encouraged by it. I wouldn't want to cross it or have anyone else cross it. I wondered, I don't know the answer to this question, so maybe somebody can provide some history for me. The Palmetto Dunes little under the roadway tunnel, how did that come to be? Why don't we employ more situations like that? Is it because of cost, or it just isn't feasible in other locations? I mean, if we're looking for alternatives, as Bill mentioned, what other ideas have come up, and what would that look like? What would it cost to do something like that?
That particular crosswalk, that was put in by the developers years ago, and you had a vehicular bridge that afforded the opportunity to do that. The town took that bridge over and rebuilt it. We demolished the old narrow rackety bridge and built a new wide bridge that met standards. But yeah, it's a cost issue. Do you bridge across, or do you somehow landscape or barricade folks and direct them down to the signalized crosswalks, which are far more safe? That's the issue, and there's 8 of those left. We mitigated 2 crosswalks in the Shelter Cove 278 project we did. There was one at Whole Foods and there was one up the sheriff's office, and so we've done away with those. But yeah, I understand your concerns completely, and it would be best to direct people to the signalized crosswalks.
You mentioned cost in the underground tunnel way. Is there a way to get something put together with that, so we would know in terms of what that expense looks like, to see whether or not it's something? I mean, it certainly would add to a lot of the quality of life, the aesthetics of the island. I think it would go a long way. I don't know what the expense is. Perhaps that's some place that if we do institute parking fees at our parks, that we could push the money to providing safety on our roadways for pedestrians and bicyclists. But I would like to see what it costs to do that.
Mark?
Okay, Bill?
Yeah. Just from my casual readings on this type of subject, we seem to have 4 alternatives. One is we go under the road, we go over the road, we signalize, or we take our chances and do nothing. And the last option, I think, really starts to speak to who we are and what's important.
Okay. Thank you. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, Yacht Cove is within my ward, and there are some serious concerns of constituents in Yacht Cove regarding this situation. Jeff mentioned that the construction had to be done on private property, and unfortunately, some damage was done to the private property irrigation and lighting system, and that has created some ill will, and we haven't resolved that matter yet. I think that's something that has to be resolved. Bill spoke to the 4 different options, and he also suggested being a little bit more creative. I think that our community ought to be pushing SCDOT more aggressively to resolve design issues more consistently with our value system on the island. When Pope Avenue was being repaved, it was suggested that we reduce the paving width to slow cars down. That was rejected, quote unquote, by SCDOT, and yet Port Royal is, the town of Port Royal is doing the exact same thing at this time. I think that as the island has grown and as Tammy has suggested, we have a conflict that is almost unresolvable. And our choice, I think, is we slow speeds of cars down in those areas. We design the road in those areas in a way that people are both psychologically and also visually responding to a different circumstance and thereby slowing down. I really believe that as the island has become more urban, by necessity, we require more lighting at night. Just the other day, in terms of the parking lot at Caligny, there were complaints by merchants that employees didn't like to go there and park at night because it was unlit. I think we are coming to that point in our community where we have to really recognize safety is an issue. So that I think that how we allow people to cross 278 is a combination of light and then road design and perhaps traffic calming measures. So it isn't a simple decision. I think we have to recognize what Tammy was saying. We have just gotten to a point where 278 for vehicular traffic is very inconsistent with the notion that people can safely walk across it. So where I come out is that I would like something done on the private property issue at Yacht Cove and have that dealt with. Secondly, I think that the light issue has to be factored in with road design, because I think we're at that point. Now, regarding the idea of underpasses, there was an unusual circumstance at Shelter Cove because it was adjacent to a water body that allowed the water table to be much lower than otherwise would be the case. If that same design were tried elsewhere on the island, your underpass would be filled with groundwater most of the time and require pumps to be operating virtually nonstop. So there are environmental physical issues that might make that impossible. However, the idea, the really fundamental question is, how long does it take to get from Stony to Sea Pine Circle on 278? And are we going to ask people to slow down for the safety of people crossing the roadway? That's essentially the question we have to answer. Thank you, Mark.
I just want to be brief. I agree with what everybody said. Thank you for the knowledge that each one of you brought to the table this morning. But realistically, just like Bill said, I support the concept we have to do something in front of Sandalwood area. Okay? And I think that's where we need to move forward on next. And the reason why I say that is because so many children live in that area that crosses the street, and sometimes with no parents. Okay? And I believe that, you know, it's our job to focus on safety first and then aesthetics second. And we already established this one. I will ask, and this is something to think forward, you know, let's ask the staff to either implement what we have now or come up with something better. And this might be something you can discuss at your retreat. It needs to be discussed at the retreat, matter of fact, because safety is very important. And let's learn from what happened in Yacht Cove, you know, because I don't want the next person that sits in my position to answer to something that we know we need to do, which is address the safety issue on 278. And I think we need to move forward with this until staff comes up with a better solution to address the aesthetic situation. And I agree too in terms of maybe we're going to have to do something in terms of how we reconfigure 278 as a whole in certain areas. But until that time happens, you know, we have to look at safety first. So I will ask for a motion to support what we've done in Yacht Cove and move it forward to the town council for more discussion. And then if from that discussion means kick it back to public safety or have a task force meeting or public meeting at the retreat to discuss this more in detail, that's fine. But I just think we just need to move forward doing something and not let it sit. Because if we do, we're just wasting time. You know, that's my opinion. So do I have a motion from anyone at this time? Tamara?
I'd make a motion to take this topic forward to the town council workshop, upcoming town council workshop for further discussion.
Okay.
I would second that.
Okay. I'm in favor too. So let's I think we have to vote. All in favor at this time? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so that's 3-0. So we ask that you move this to the retreat. All right, what's next on the on the agenda? Review, well, we already did that. So we're at executive session. Do I have a motion to move in executive session to conduct interviews for applicants for the Park and Recreation Commission?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Can I make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All right, we adjourn. All right, thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Okay.
you.
All right.
Thank you.